Imagine this. You're a wealthy trader living in Cyprus around 300 BC. You've built your business from the ground up. Ship's cargo connections, your life is the picture of success. One day you set sail from Phoenicia to Piraeus, just another routine journey across the Mediterranean. But on this trip, something changes. A storm hits, your ship sinks, and with it goes everything: your cargo, your livelihood, your fortune. In a matter of hours, you go from rich to broke, from secure to lost. That was the story of Zeno. And instead of being destroyed by that loss, he used it as the foundation for something entirely new, a philosophy that would survive thousands of years: Stoicism. Zeno didn't fall apart. He didn't curse the gods or wallow in misery. Instead, he turned inward. He started reading the works of philosophers like Socrates and began to ask the deeper questions. What truly matters? What can we really depend on? Where does our peace come from? And what happens when everything we thought we needed is gone? Those questions didn't lead him back to trading. They led him to wisdom. And in that search for meaning, Zeno laid the foundation for Stoic philosophy. Now, when people hear Stoicism, they often picture someone who's emotionally cold or disconnected. But that's a misunderstanding. Stoicism isn't about being numb, it's about being strong. Not strong in a loud, aggressive way, but strong in the sense that your peace doesn't depend on circumstances. It's about emotional resilience, clarity of thought, and the ability to remain steady no matter what the world throws at you. At its heart, Stoicism is built on one powerful idea: we don't control what happens to us, but we always control how we respond. And that mindset changes everything. Zeno understood this the hard way. He lost everything. But in that moment of loss, he discovered something priceless: the ability to control his reaction. He realized that our inner world, our thoughts, choices, and values are the only things we truly own. And once you build your life around that, external chaos loses its power over you. What's fascinating is how Zeno shared these ideas. He didn't lock them away in scrolls for elites. He taught them publicly in the open air, where anyone could join the conversation. His philosophy wasn't reserved for scholars or kings. It was meant for everyone: merchants, laborers, soldiers, even slaves. And that openness is part of why Stoicism spread, because it works for anyone in any situation. Epictetus, for example, was born a slave. He had nothing. But through Stoicism, he found freedom in the one place no one could take from him: his mind. Then there was Seneca, a wealthy advisor to emperors, and Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor himself, who ruled a vast empire while writing personal reflections that would later become one of the most important Stoic texts in history. These men came from very different worlds, but they shared one belief: your peace, your power, your purpose. None of it comes from the outside. It all starts within. Stoicism doesn't teach you to avoid pain or pretend life is easy. It teaches you to prepare for difficulty, to face discomfort not with fear but with readiness, because life isn't always fair. Storms come, people leave, plans fall apart. The Stoic doesn't pretend this won't happen. The Stoic prepares for when it does. That's why one of the most common Stoic practices is something called voluntary discomfort. The idea is simple: do hard things on purpose. Sleep on the floor, take cold showers, fast for a day, wear simple clothes. Why? Because when you learn to be okay without luxury, you stop fearing its loss. When you prove to yourself that you can be content with less, you become harder to shake. You realize you don't need much to be okay. That realization that your peace isn't tied to comfort is freeing. And in today's world, that kind of freedom is rare. Because let's be honest, we're bombarded every day with messages that say the opposite: that you're not good enough unless you have more. More money, more likes, more stuff. Advertisements, influencers, companies, they all profit off your insecurity. They sell the idea that happiness is always one step away. Just buy this, wear that, upgrade this. But Stoicism breaks that illusion. It teaches that happiness doesn't come from getting more, it comes from needing less, from knowing what truly matters and letting go of the rest. And that idea, that's revolutionary. Seneca said learning to live with less will create space in your life for the things that truly matter. It's not about rejecting everything, it's about choosing intentionally, simplifying so you can focus, creating space so you can breathe. Now think about how much time we spend stressing over things that are completely out of our control. A delayed flight, someone else's opinion, the weather, the algorithm. These things pull at our emotions, hijack our focus, and exhaust us. But what if we could just stop, not ignore reality, but stop reacting to every single thing that doesn't go our way? That's where the Stoic mindset becomes a superpower. One of the core teachings of Stoicism is the dichotomy of control. It's the idea that everything in life falls into two categories: things we can control and things we can't. Our thoughts, actions, and decisions, that's our domain. Everything else, let it go. Epictetus put it best. The chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so I can clearly say to myself which are externals, not under my control, and which have to do with the choices I actually control. That sounds simple, but it's life-changing. Because when you stop giving your energy to things you can't influence, you suddenly have more power to focus on what you can. It's like closing all the background tabs in your brain. You clear space, you breathe easier, and you show up more fully for the things that matter. That's Stoicism. It's not a cold philosophy. It's not about being indifferent to life. It's about choosing where your attention goes, choosing what deserves your reaction, and most importantly, choosing how you want to live, no matter what the world throws at you. Let's talk about control. In a world where so much is uncertain, where the economy shifts, algorithms change people, disappoint us, and plans fall apart, what's actually in our hands? This is where Stoicism steps in with its most essential principle, the dichotomy of control. According to the Stoics, everything we encounter falls into two simple categories: the things we can control and the things we can't. And the key to living a peaceful, grounded life is learning to tell the difference and to stop wasting energy on what's outside our reach. We can't control what other people say. We can't control the weather. We can't control the past or even most of the future. But we can always control our response, our effort, our perspective. Now that might sound basic, but let's be honest, it's something we all forget. Think about the last time you got upset. Was it because of something you could control? Or was it because something outside your control didn't meet your expectations? Maybe someone ghosted you. Maybe your boss didn't recognize your work. Maybe your post didn't perform well. Whatever it was, it probably hit harder because you were attached to an outcome that wasn't yours to manage. This is where the Stoic mindset becomes like armor. Not the kind that blocks feelings, but the kind that helps you face reality without losing yourself in it. Take something simple but frustrating, like uploading a video to YouTube. You spend hours writing, filming, editing. You obsess over the thumbnail. You optimize the title. You finally hit publish. And then, crickets, no views, no traction. You check again. Still nothing. It's easy to spiral, easy to feel like you failed. But here's the thing: you didn't fail. You just tied your success to something outside your control, the reaction. A Stoic would look at that moment differently. They'd say, did I do my part to the best of my ability? If the answer is yes, that's the win. The outcome, that's not the measure of your worth. Your effort is. This shift in thinking doesn't just change how you approach creativity, it changes how you approach everything. Let's say you've been working hard at your job for months. You show up early, stay late, take on extra work. Eventually you ask for a promotion. You think it's earned, but your manager says no. Suddenly you're crushed. But take a step back. What if you judged your success not by whether you got the promotion, but by the quality of your effort, the dedication, the professionalism, the growth? What if you measured yourself by your input, not the outcome? That's Stoicism in action. It doesn't remove the disappointment, but it protects your self-worth from being defined by things you can't control. And that protection, that inner stability, is everything in a world that changes constantly. It also reshapes how you think about ambition. Because Stoicism isn't against ambition. In fact, it encourages striving for excellence, for character, for meaning. But it warns us against tying our identity to results. It reminds us that chasing status or wealth won't bring lasting peace if our inner life is in chaos. So the question becomes, why are you doing what you're doing? Are you chasing success because it aligns with your values, or because you think it'll finally make you feel enough? Are you creating from a place of purpose, or are you trying to prove something to the world? The Stoic path invites us to realign with purpose, to do meaningful work for its own sake, not for applause, not for validation, but because it's worth doing. And when you operate from that mindset, you become much harder to rattle. Another core idea the Stoics embraced is voluntary simplicity, learning to live with less, not out of self-denial, but out of freedom. The less you depend on external things, the more resilient you become. Seneca, who was one of the wealthiest men in Rome, used to deliberately practice poverty. He'd sleep on the floor, eat simple meals, wear rough clothes, and he'd say to himself, "Is this what I feared?" It wasn't punishment, it was preparation. It was a reminder that even if he lost everything, he could still endure and even thrive. You don't have to go to that extreme, but the message holds. Try skipping a luxury you're used to. Walk instead of drive. Eat simply for a few days. Use your phone less. Whatever it is, the goal isn't suffering, it's training. You're reminding yourself, I'm not owned by these comforts. I can let go, and that's powerful, especially in a culture where consumption is everywhere, where you're told that you need more money, more things, more attention to matter. But what if you flip that? What if your peace came from needing less? That's where Stoicism creates space for reflection, for values, for clarity. And this isn't just about material stuff. It's about expectations too. Most of our emotional distress comes from unmet expectations. When reality doesn't match the story we told ourselves, we suffer. We expected loyalty and got betrayal. We expected recognition and got silence. We expected ease and got struggle. So what's the Stoic move? It's not to stop caring. It's to prepare, to expect that things will go wrong, not to be negative, but to be grounded. Because when the worst happens and you've already made peace with the possibility, it doesn't shake you. This practice is called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. You mentally rehearse the worst-case scenario, not to invite it, but to remove its power. And when you've looked fear in the eye and said, I can handle you, it loses its grip. The Stoics weren't trying to escape life, they were trying to live it better, with more courage, more wisdom, more compassion. And they believed that by doing so, they could help create a better world, not just for themselves, but for everyone. Justice for the Stoics was the highest of virtue, because none of us lives in a vacuum. We're connected. We're here to serve something beyond ourselves. That's why Stoicism isn't just personal, it's deeply ethical. It asks not just, how do I stay calm, but also, how do I do the right thing even when it's hard? That's what makes Stoicism timeless. It's not just about surviving storms, it's about who you become in the middle of them. As we bring all of this together, you might be wondering, how does Stoicism show up in modern life? After all, we're not Roman emperors. We're not walking through marble forums and tunics debating ethics in public squares. But the truth is, Stoicism is more alive today than ever. You just have to know where to look. In psychology, for example, some of the most effective therapy models are deeply influenced by Stoic thought. Take rational emotive behavior therapy, or REBT for short. Created by Albert Ellis in the 1950s, this therapeutic method helps people identify irrational beliefs and challenge them with logic and reason. Sound familiar? That's straight from the Stoic playbook. REBT teaches that our emotions don't come from external events, but from the beliefs we hold about those events. It's not the thing itself that hurts, it's our interpretation of it. And once we recognize that, we can start changing our response. This is almost word for word what Epictetus taught over 2,000 years ago. He said people are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. Now think about how this plays out in everyday life. Let's say someone leaves a harsh comment on something you created, a tweet, a video, a painting, whatever. You could take it personally, spiral into self-doubt, maybe even stop creating altogether. Or you could pause and ask, is this comment within my control? Does it say something about me or about them? Can I learn from it, or should I let it go? When you take a Stoic approach, you stop being reactive and start being intentional. Another modern application is found in logotherapy, a form of psychotherapy developed by Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and author of Man's Search for Meaning. Logotherapy is built around the idea that humans can endure almost anything if they have a strong enough why. That's Stoicism through and through. The idea that we can't always change our situation, but we can always choose our attitude. Even in suffering, we can find purpose. Frankl once wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." That space, that brief pause between what happens and how you react, that's the foundation of Stoic practice. Now let's take this beyond therapy. Let's bring it into daily life, creative work, even leadership. If you're building something, whether it's a YouTube channel, a business, a brand, or a community, Stoicism can be your compass. Because the journey is always unpredictable. One day the algorithm loves you, the next it doesn't. One moment your work resonates, the next it disappears into the void. But if you define success by effort, not outcome, by integrity, not applause, you win either way. Let's say you're an artist. You pour your heart into a piece. You share it and it flops. Does that mean the work was worthless? No. The act of creating with purpose already had value. The reaction doesn't define the effort. This is what the Stoics meant when they talked about living in agreement with nature, meaning living in harmony with your own nature, your own values. You do what's right because it's right, not because it guarantees success. And here's the most freeing part: when you live this way, failure loses its sting because you're no longer playing someone else's game. You're focused on your lane. You know what you're about. And that clarity, that self-ownership makes you unstoppable. That mindset also builds real confidence. Not the loud kind, but the quiet kind. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything because it's already anchored. You stop chasing validation. You start showing up fully regardless of how the world responds. And maybe most importantly, Stoicism helps you become a better human being. Not just a more focused creator or leader, but someone who acts with purpose, lives with balance, and treats others with dignity. One of the four Stoic virtues we haven't talked much about yet is justice. To the Stoics, justice wasn't about law or punishment, it was about responsibility. It meant recognizing that we are all part of something bigger than ourselves, that we have a duty to treat others with fairness, with compassion, and with respect. That's what made Stoicism so ahead of its time. The Stoics believed in equality long before it was fashionable. They believed women were just as capable of practicing virtue as men. Musonius Rufus, one of Epictetus's teachers, even argued for the equal education of women, a radical stance in his time. They also believed in universality. The word cosmopolitan, which we now use to describe global cities, actually came from the Stoics. It means citizen of the world. The idea that borders, class, race, or status don't change our shared human dignity. So yes, Stoicism is personal, but it's also social. It doesn't just ask, how do I stay calm? It asks, how can I live in a way that makes the world better for everyone? And we've seen this play out in history too. Take Nelson Mandela. During his 27 years in prison, Mandela studied Marcus Aurelius. He absorbed the lessons of restraint, purpose, and patience. And when he finally walked free, he didn't seek revenge. He sought reconciliation. He didn't let the injustice he faced define his future. He focused on what was still within his power, rebuilding a nation. That's Stoicism. It's not passive, it's not cold, it's the most active kind of courage. The kind that looks at chaos and instead of panicking, chooses to lead. And that's the invitation Stoicism gives to all of us. You don't need to become emotionless. You just need to stop letting emotions run the show. You don't need to give up on your goals. You just need to stop attaching your identity to outcomes you can't control. You don't need to reject the world. You just need to stop being ruled by it. Because at the end of the day, things will go wrong. You will face loss, rejection, disappointment. That's life. But if you meet it all with clarity, courage, temperance, and justice, you won't just survive. You'll grow, you'll lead, you'll become someone who others can trust, not because you have all the answers, but because you know how to stay grounded when things fall apart. So when the ship sinks like it did for Zeno, you won't drown with it. You'll take a breath, look around, and ask the most important question. What now? Because that's where Stoicism lives. Not in what happens to you, but in what you do next.